Wow, it's great to see this crowd here today. Since we moved from the library down here last year, it has been wonderful to see so many people come out, and it's great this time to see a lot of new faces and a lot of seasoned men and young men here. And I know some of them, they're actually great people. But for those who have been coming a long time, came all last year, what am I going to say? Oh, come on, somebody speak up.
Raffle.
That's right. Our reverse raffle is the last Saturday in July. Tickets are $50. That's for 2 people. The first prize, which is actually the first prize we have to draw and lock it up in a safe, kind of fun. It will be on Saturday, the last Saturday. I have tickets. Dave Harless, of course, has tickets. He's immediate past president of Historic Hopewell. And what happens this Sunday? That's right, the last concert of our May series. And that starts at 5. Of course, it's free. Bring your snacks, bring whatever you want, sit on the lawn, enjoy Magnolia. And at our board meeting last week, the board approved doing a September series, just like we did last year. So look forward to that. We do not have the bands lined up yet, but we'll be doing September. And thank you for coming. And it's my pleasure to introduce Susan Gladys, who is chairing this event this year. Thank you so much, Susan.
Thank you. I am so excited. I want to jump up and down so bad right now with Betsy in the back. This idea started with my son John and me last summer, and while we were talking about it, I turned around and who pulled up beside us? Ricky Irby in his truck. And we said, would you be interested? And he said, I'm in. You just tell me what to do. So John and I have worked on this for about a year, and what an amazing group of men. I am so excited. I cannot stand this. I'm so excited. So we have men that have achieved greatness in this town, and I grew up in Enon, and I went to Thomas Dale, but I am such a big Blue Devil fan, you can see, and one of the people on the panel is my family. So thank you for being here. Okay, welcome to Titletown South, an interview with the Hopewell High School coaches and players that made history by winning 6 state championship football titles. The panel of players and coaches are being interviewed by Jeff Butler and Stephen Kalos, hosts of the WHAP radio show that broadcasts the football games each Friday night. We have players from the 1949, 1950, 1951 teams, along with coaches and players from the 2003, 2017, and 2019 teams, not to forget the 1969 undefeated team. Join us, sorry, this was written a while back, as we reminisce and learn just how these extraordinary men were able to accomplish greatness 6 times. So welcome.
Well, it is a wonderful privilege to be here and to help celebrate such legacies of history. And our thanks for the hospitality of the American Legion. They are doing a great job with this Lunch and Learn. And I'm so glad that each one of you could be here. I've been the play-by-play voice since 2015 for Hopewell football. And as we look back from 49, 50, 51 to the 2003, 17, and 19, you know, it's very interesting in light of how football has been used as a force for good. Right in the middle of the Korean conflict, you had the early state championships bringing hope to our community in the midst of strife. In the midst of the Vietnam War, we had a 1969 team that is really deserving of a 7th state championship. And in the midst of that provided such hope. How about with 9/11? And right on that recovery end of that, we had the 2003 state championship. Football has been used tremendously to bring hope and healing to the community. And then coming out of this pandemic, we have had the opportunity to look back at class of 17 and 19 and 2 state championships. So the role of football is a tremendous thing that God uses to bring hope and healing, to our country. And so what Stefan's been with me since 2019, and what we'd like to do is to invite you into our world of broadcasting. And we are here to, what typically happens before every game, unless there's a malfunction, is that we have the national anthem. And so we thought it'd be very appropriate before we kick off this celebration is that we would have our national anthem in light of that syncing up so well with the purpose of American Legion. Would you stand as we have and sing out our national anthem?
So proudly we hail at this twilight's last gleam, whose blood stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight, from the ramparts we watched, for so gallantly stream, and the rockets burst clear, the bombs bursting in.
Let's play ball. I'm going to turn it over to Stefan Kalas, and he has the pleasure of introducing this first part of our program to my right, and young men from the class of 49, 50, and 51.
Thanks, Jeff, and thanks everyone who's helped with this. So I do this up front. Don't forget my daughter Ari for helping put down the gridiron here. You see the green tablecloths and you see the yard markers. And what these represent are roughly the years of these gentlemen behind the yard markers. You got 1949, 50, and 51 where we won 3 state, and I say we, I mean Hopewell High School, 3 state championships. You've got your 1969 yard marker, Marshall Parker, and then you've got your 2003 state championship yard marker, and then your 2017 and 2019 yard marker. All those were state championships in some form, and that's really the nexus of why we're here and what we're celebrating. But I wanted to say a few words about who we have and give you sort of a little overview of the format that we're trying to follow. And I see my mother there. She's the reason I've probably been prepping my whole life to do this. My mother was in the class of 1952, meaning she was a sophomore, junior, and senior with went to school overlap with some of these guys. And before I could even read, but I did learn how to crawl into a closet and pull books out, I found her 1952, 51, and 50 kaleidoscopes. And I saw these pictures, and we have kaleidoscopes and we have pictures and we have photos over there that Sheila Hancock Miller brought in. Her husband Steve sitting next to her we were all in the class of 1980. Steve was a great football player in our day. I've got from Larry Hips some wonderful photos here, and he's got some glossies as well. Please take care if you get a chance to look at them. But that's what got me going as far as my love for Hopewell High School sports and especially football that's continued through all these years. When I could read, I learned that these players had really cool names like Flugie Walker. That was Sheila's stepdad for 25 years, and he was one of the most outstanding players in Hopewell High School history. They had nicknames like Baby Nelms. They had nicknames like Flea Lee. They had there were a lot of great nicknames. Hobo Ackerman. So that just got me excited, and I think I realized that this whole Hopewell High School football thing is really a microcosm of the community, of the country, of the honor, of what Jeff talked about. So what we have here, we have some amazing gentlemen. We've got Larry Hips, who was an all-state guard. All of these guys played on at least 1, 2, some of them 3 of the 1949, 50, and 51 state champions. He's showing us 3, and you should be proud of that, because in that era, those teams won. They were 10-0 each year, and they won into the 52 season 35 games in a row. That record lasted for many years, and ironically, that record... Absolutely. And if I sound like I'm talking fast and I'm in a 2-minute drill, it's because I am. Because when Susan came to me and said, would you and Jeff help out? And I, of course, said, absolutely, we'd love to do this. She said, you think we can fill an hour? I think we can fill a decade talking about these guys, and I would be glad to come back and talk at a slower pace, but we've got a lot of folks to talk about. But that 35-game win streak lasted for years, and it actually ended when Hopewell almost beat the team that broke it, Lane High School, in 1965. That Butch Altman was on that team, and I know Coach Tiller coached the backs, and he coached Butch Altman, who was a fantastic running back in that time. But then we've got J.P. Tiller to Mr. Hibbs's left, who played during this era and then coached into the 1960s until he got to Marshall Parker's year. And JP loved it so much that he lives in Maloney Lofts overlooking Murner Field. And speaking of Murner Field, I was supposed to start off, why are we calling this Titletown and Titletown South? Well, many of you know Titletown is the name of Green Bay, Wisconsin, where the Packers play. And they've got a lot of championships. Hopewell's got a lot of championships. It's a small community relative to the NFL. Hopewell's a small community relative to the rest of the world. And, it's not the size of the devil in the fight. It's the size of the fight in the devil. And I've always seen a lot of parallels with that. We play in a wonderful ancient stadium at Murner Field. They play at Lambeau Field. And then there are a lot of other similarities I'll point to. But because we won so many championships, we needed a title. So we came up with Titletown South. No disrespect to Tuscaloosa and other places that think they are, but we are Titletown South. And it's because of these guys. And then Charlie Cormany also played on that team. And when he finished in that era, and when he finished playing, he opened the most wonderful sporting goods store that sold everything from every cleat ever sold to every small to the youth league teams throughout Hopewell, track spikes, you name it, he had it. It was in the old building that I don't even know what we call it anymore, but I'll call it the Jeremiah's building because that's the only iteration I can think of. And then the kingpin, the linchpin of this, I think, is Marshall Parker. Marshall Parker is here, and Marshall, get this, was born right after this era. This first championship era ended in 1951. And 18 years later, Marshall is quarterbacking Hopewell, #1 to a 20-game non-losing string. They were 19-0-1. They tied only Prince George, which still bothers us a great deal. But in 1969, Marshall led Hopewell to a UPI, United Press International State Championship. They were 10-0, and they dogged everybody on their schedule. They had 6 shutouts, and they had a fantastic offense and some great players. Ironically, and we probably shouldn't mention this, but that was when the playoffs had first started, and Hopewell ran into a Douglas Freeman team led by a guy named Barty Smith. Barty Smith eventually became a Green Bay Packer. And he was tough to tackle, wasn't he, Marshall? And
I played on the offense.
Marshall said he played on the offense. That's a great answer. You can see why Marshall was such a great coach. That's good thinking. But in any event, that was Hopewell's only loss that year. And we've got a banner that says UPI State Championships, and that was a terrific team. But I say Marshall's kind of the linchpin of all this because he finished his playing career and had an outstanding college career, landed himself in Sports Illustrated, and then, like a lot of great people, came back to Hopewell to teach and coach. and he became a phenomenal coach. And the guys sitting to his left include Herman Henderson, who was a longtime, fantastic, wonderful football assistant, wrestling coach, and among many other things, and just a pillar of the community. And as I told him when I saw him today for the first time in a few years, I used to be younger than him. I don't know what happened, but look at this guy. I mean, it's ridiculous. And then Marshall brought in Ricky Irby, and Ricky was a baseball player and a baseball coach and assistant football coach, and everybody, including me, said, why is he a football coach? Anyway, he proved everybody wrong. He was an assistant for 10 years, took over in 2010, and then brought Hopewell 2 more state championships. Marshall was his mentor. Marshall's the reason Ricky became the head coach, because it was on Marshall's recommendation. And Ricky has just carried the flag from the beginning through Marshall, who ties it all together with Ricky, and then Marshall's son, Brock, who was a phenomenal quarterback on some amazing teams that knocked on state championship doors, and he's coached on the 2003 state championship team, and has continued on in a more of a full-time capacity, and has been part of the 2017 and 2019 teams. And from there, I forgot I was supposed to turn it over to you. Did I go past? Did I run out of bounds? I think I did. So
interview some of these folks over here.
Well, I think what I'd like to do is go through and have you finish up who's who, and then I think we should open it up to Marshall for his memories of these guys and how they impacted him. And then he can also talk about his guys and what they did. And then I'd like for everybody to have an opportunity, if we go around the room once we tell everybody who's who, what their memories are of their time and of their era, what their takeaways are. That's my suggestion, and we clearly did not rehearse this, so I'm going to defer to however you wish to do it, because we only have one mic.
Well, just continuing the good start that Stefan had, you mentioned Ricky and Marshall, Ricky and Brock. Brock is the offensive coordinator for Ricky, and to his left is Lee Buchikowski, who was part of that 2003 state championship, playing for Marshall Parker. He works here in the area, and it's great to have you with us. And to your left, I'm going to need some help because I don't know. Jared. Well, I look forward to meeting you personally. I know the two men to your left. Joe Elides was part of the 2019 state championship. Khalil Murdoch as well. And so, but we also want to reference a 2017 state championship that Ronnie Walker, who is now at UVA, helped out along with Robert Briggs on the rushing attack, and also Greg Cuffey passing, I believe it was like 21 touchdowns. And so as we look at the amazing turnaround from having lost the last 3 regular season games against Dale, Dinwiddie, and Meadowbrook, Hopewell's 2017 state championship ran the table all the way through the playoffs and finished with that 11-4 record. And Ronnie, of course, spearheaded that and went on to Indiana and UVA. And the second state championship that we've been fortunate to call was a perfect 15-0 team that just did not have anything negative to be able to say. It was just a phenomenal year, led by Travion Henderson, who had, I believe, a total of 53 touchdowns, 45 rushing, 5 pass receiving, 1 by punt return, and 2 on kickoff returns. Of course, he got to Ohio State, where he had a sensational freshman year. And so that is from 1949, 50, and 51, 1969, a real 7th state championship right here. We're declaring it. And then 2003, 2017, and 19. And it's just a great opportunity to celebrate with each. We have some questions that we want to ask, and we wanted to start to my right, because we wanted them from the class of 49, 50, and 51 to talk about what stands out the most if you had to limit it to just one thing, what is your takeaway from your football run?
Are you asking me that question?
Yes, sir.
My takeaway is 5 years undefeated. I started in the quarterback league the first year they had it at Hopewell. I played for DuPont. We went undefeated. Moved to JVs. We went undefeated. And 3 years on the varsity, undefeated. My son said, "Oh, Daddy, you got to talk about that all the time." I said, "Well, you guys ain't doing it." That's a heck of a takeaway. And one little thing I'd like to say about, he mentioned Fuji Walker. We had 2 Flugies in Hopewell. Fuji Walker and Fuji Moore. But we had a whole lot of Flugies.
Well, I guess the best thing that I can remember is the teammates that aren't here. I think of all the teammates that have died and gone on to better land, looking forward to Jesus and also going up and serving. It's a wonderful thing, and it's something that I won't forget for many, many years. The other part was, of course, winning the victory. We won the victory because we were endowed to do so, not by our coaching, not by any official, but by the good Lord Jesus. Thank you.
One of the best things that I remember was we were playing Petersburg in Hopewell, and Coach Dave wouldn't play us at night, so we had to play that one on Saturday afternoon. It was hot as the devil, and we were losing 18-6 to Petersburg. And Lewin Cox came up to me and said, looked up and he said, a cloud went in front of the sun. He said, now we're going to beat the hell out of them in the second half, which we did. And that was in 1949 back here. And it's good of a bunch of guys that you could ever hope to play with or anything else. They do anything for you. And we had our good times. We played hard. I would say we had doing fun and everything else and all. And everybody tried to outdo the other one, even though we were trying to outdo it against the opponents and all that we played. And I couldn't have played with a better bunch of guys.
Thank you, gentlemen.
So before I ask that question of Marshall, I want to also add that Marshall helped me in the broadcast booth for a number of years, right after 2015, right on up. And so now, even though he's passed the torch to Stefan, we are still having him during our halftime reports and pregame. And I want to ask Marshall, you may certainly give another outstanding thought, but through the grapevine, I heard it said that when you were quarterback, you threw a touchdown pass right-handed and left-handed. And I want to substantiate that is true. And if you could maybe elaborate on that game in which that happened, and then of course your favorite, it may be a different one, but I want to hear your outstanding memory of your career.
Well, first I got to thank Coach J.P. Teller. He's the one who gave me my first start when I was a sophomore. It was his last year coaching at Hopewell High School. But the 5 touchdowns was not in high school. Because, Hopewell football back then, Larry and Dennis, we just ran the ball all the time. We didn't throw the ball a lot, did we? But that was in college, and yes, I did throw 3 left-handed and 2 right-handed. But that was a long time ago too. I remember one of the things that remind when I talk about the 49, 50, 51 year, I was born right after those state championships. But growing up, and I know that Larry and Dennis and some other players I see out here, all we ever heard was how great those teams were. You know, when are you guys going to do this stuff? You know, we heard it all the time, which was great because it put a lot of pressure on us to win. And we did. I mean, I think Larry and Dennis played on some teams that started this stuff, you know, with Coach Stallard and then Coach Dean before that. And then when I was a senior or junior senior, we went undefeated for 2 years. And we were considered UPI state champions, but we don't have the banners and so forth like with the playoffs. Because the playoffs at that time only had 1 game. And we were 10-0 my senior year, and we played one region game. We went over there. I think we thought we were going to kill them, and Barney Smith had another thing to say about that. But we ended up being UPI state champions because they did it for regular season at that time. Because the playoffs, I don't think the true playoffs started the system we have now until 1974. I think is when they finally put all the stuff together. We have state championships like we have today. But you know, being the vocal point between those guys there, and I've known Charlie for ever since I think he ran me out of his store a couple of times because I liked a couple gloves they had in there. But Coach Tiller, my first recollection of him was this finger right here on his hand was poking me here one day in the gym, and never forget it. I just had so much respect for Coach, and he knows I still call him Coach today. I don't ever call him JP. It's always been Coach Tiller to me. And of course, I grew up with Larry Hip's son, Danny. He was a year or so behind me, a couple years behind me, but I've known Larry a long time. So just knowing those guys and what they did to win 35 football games in a row, it's an amazing feat, you know. One of the running backs that played on their team was a guy named George McDaniel. He came into the Hopewell High School Wall of Fame, and I remember him telling me, see, I never lost a football game until I got to college. I went, what? He said, well, we're undefeated, like Joey said, undefeated in JV, all the way undefeated in high school varsity. I go to Virginia Tech and we lose. I know how to take it. I never lost. What a great feeling that has to be, you know, to be in that situation. But, you know, then fast forward a little farther, this guy beside me here, we've been friends a long time. Actually, me and Herman played against each other. He played at Prince George, and before I give the mic to him, he's going to say this story, and I'm going to say it right now, that he was on the very first Prince George football team that ever beat Hopewell. That's true, and that was the first football game we ever started at quarterback, too. So I'll never forget it. We lost 12-6, and he said, yeah, you were still wearing a leather helmet because you put it in your back pocket when the game was over. So, but yeah, Herman, he actually is a Hopewell boy. I mean, he went to Prince George High School, but he lived on Dinwiddie Avenue right across court. He could have been closer to Woodlawn School before he got to any school in Prince George County. He lived right there. So he grew up, you know, and really in Hopewell. So I always considered him part of the family. And when we got back coaching, he was already here. I came in, he left, he came back after I became head coach. He was my defensive coordinator for years until I got out and stuff. Then he stayed, I think, on Rick with you a year or two and stuff. And actually, Herman's still coaching. He hadn't quit. He's still coaching with his son Jim, who played for us with my son Brock when they played. He's still coaching right now at Monaghan High School. You know. Yeah, he's only 122 right now. And that's the story he always told our kids every time we went to practice when we started summer practice. He'd go, guys, how old am I? They all knew. Whatever year was, that's how old he was. So he's 122 this next football season. So, but, you know, getting back to the 2003 season, I'll never forget we were playing. Probably the coldest game we had was the game before the state championship game we played down in Chesapeake. At Oscar Smith High School, I mean cold. And all of a sudden, almost like you heard Larry say, or Charlie say about the cloud came out, the sun came out, and we just rolled. I think Jared kicked off a kickoff, and he murdered the guy when he got that ball. Couldn't find it. We ended up scoring. Jared catches a pass from Lee and takes it down for another 60-yard. It just turned, the tide turned our way that game. I mean, in cold. And then Jared and Lee can tell you it was a cold day. But then we come back to the state championship game in 2003, and a beautiful day at City Stadium in Richmond. And Herman and I were the last two in the locker room. And he looked at me, and I'll never forget, I don't know if you remember this tonight. He goes, this is truly a Hopewell thing. And I'm kind of feeding back to Coach Tiller, because he came back to me after the state championship and said something to him. I'll get to in a minute. But Herman said, this is truly a Hopewell thing. I said, what do you mean? He says, look at our staff. They're all kids that we coached. They're all part of this Titletown South, as he wants to say. And it was an awesome feeling when he said that, that it was a Hopewell thing. And I think we had one coach from Verona, and I said, well, he's a Blue Devil. I said, we're not Academy House. But it was really true, because all our coaches were born, raised in Hopewell. And it was an awesome, awesome feeling. We go out, and the rest is history. I mean, the game never was close, and we thought it was going to be a really tough game, and it ended up being a really easy game. Probably the easiest game, guys, we had in the playoffs with the league and Cherry Pie. I mean, it was. And the fans that came out that day was just amazing. In this small town, this community, you people here, how you came out and supported us. And then to feed off from there, when I was going out as AD, and Jeff kind of hit on it too. Well, let me get back to Coach Tiller. I remember we had a thing at Myrna Field, and I remember Coach Tiller came to me and said, Marshall, it had to take a Hopewell boy to get back here at this head coaching job to win the state championship. And I never thought about it, Coach. I don't know if you remember saying that to me, but you did. And I felt that same way when I was looking who was going to replace me. And I had no doubt, me and Herman talked about it for many days of what we're going to do. But Ricky was our number one choice, by far. We knew he was dedicated to it. He loved the game. I mean, this was a young man. I couldn't get to play football when he was in high school, because he was so in love with baseball. And then he came and begged me for a job. I want to coach football, because he just fell in love with it. And he took it to another height and stuff. He's just been an awesome coach. I mean, he does things the right way. And that's the way we taught it all along. I know we stood up and did the national anthem. Well, when I was coming along, Coach would, we always did the Lord's Prayer. We did it, and we were told we couldn't do it. But we did it all the time. I wouldn't go have somebody tell me I couldn't do that, because that's what we always started off with. It might not have been on the field where everybody saw it. We always did it in the locker room, didn't we, guys? We always did it. And Ricky's continued all that stuff on. He's an awesome coach, and I'm going to hand it over there, because I can talk all day about Hopewell football and the stories I know. And I'm going to give it to Herman and let him. I'm glad I got that one story about the leather helmet out of the way.
He stole all my thunder, because that's exactly where I was going to start. But Marshall and I go way back. We really hated each other. I hated to even think about the fact that he would be on the staff. When my brother George heard about it, and then when we had Vance Johnson and Alan Nobles helping us in the JV program, he was sick of it. But that's because we lived right there. I'm looking back there at Ralph Collins and Bob Moore. I worked with them on his paint crew out there in Prince George. We painted every one of those schools clove beige. And but what I'm saying is, we lived right across. I was closer to Woodlawn School than I was to Prince George. And we had to go all the way to Clements, which was Prince George High School. So that gave me a lot of time to get in trouble on the bus from there to from home to there. And so for me to be a part of the Hopewell staff, and Marshall, of course, JP, but I have coached with everyone since Jack Stout. I was with every coach, head coach, at Hopewell High School, from Jack Stallard to Ricky Irby. Now, if somebody replaces Ricky, then I guess I'll have to come back just for a little while. But, I grew up, like I said, right across the street. And we came here in '58, and that's all we heard about was Hopewell football. And I was, of course, at Prince George. And Bobby Swineford was out there. And when he found out I was coming here to Hopewell to coach with Jack Stallard, he almost ripped my head off. because I played for him and Bill Woodby. But, I heard all the stories. And, Altman went to, he was in the same RAs at Woodlawn Baptist and ran on that track team that I just watched, as far as, when we did stuff with that. But, like I said, Al Nobles, Vance Johnson, those guys, I could go across the street and play football against them. The leather helmet is true, though, I will tell you. Marshall Parker's first helmet was leather. And his daddy came up here and told the coach that if he dare put that helmet back on that son, that he was going to have his head. But to kind of, savor that. But, it really meant an awful lot. We were here. I married my wonderful wife, Peggy, and we were here, got married here in '74. And we went to Carolina, where I coached for about 6 or 8 years down there and returned. I left here with no children. I returned with 3 sons. And then we had the 4th one, which everybody knows because there's always a story about Bobby. And I think Lee Buchikowski down there can remember one, the Meadowbrook ball game when he said Bobby had to go in at center. And I think Lee got sacked about 3 times in a row. And he says, "Bobby, give me the daggone ball." And Bobby said, "I tell you what, I can either block or I can get you the ball. Now, I'll get you the ball, but you're going to have to, if I get you the ball, you better do something with it." So, this has been a really good ride for us. We produced 4 Blue Devils here from one Royal. But we produced 4 Blue Devils, and I believe that there's more blue and gold bleeding in my blood than there is green and gold. And it's because of this guy beside me. I mean, we go way back. We had always had it out in the office before we came to the field. Whether I agreed or disagreed, when we came to the field, didn't make it hell beans what it was. It was going to be our way. We agreed to disagree. And that is something that, because of the fact, that Blue Devil pride runs really deep. I was really blessed to be coached by extremely fine coaches. Jim Garrison at Chowan, a Hall of Famer. Dal Shealy at Carson Newman, Fellowship of Christian Athletes chairperson. He was head of Fellowship of Christian Athletes for a number of years. Then come back and I worked with Jack Stallard, Moon Mullins, and then Larry Carter, and some guy by the name of Marshall Parker. And really and truthfully, we had a good ride. And I'll say this about the 03 team. That was the worst experience that I ever had through the season as far as trying to get everything together. I mean, it was pulling hair, tooth and nail as soon as we hit the playoffs. I looked at Marshall, we came in off the field one day, I said, "Are we on autopilot?" I mean, everything clicked, everything came together. I mean, it was then that we said, there's something really special about this team. Because we fought tooth and nail to try to get everything onto the field every Friday night during that season. And then suddenly, bam, it clicked. They stayed on task. I mean, it was tremendous. So, it really goes back, though, to the very beginning. You hear, like I said, it was almost 50 years. I guess it was 52 years, Marshall, before the next state championship came. But it was a very unique group. And winning breeds winning. And unfortunately, a lot of times you'll find losing really breeds losing. And that is instilled as a winning philosophy when you start winning and you believe in winning and you'll continue to win. And often you'll never accept defeat because of the fact you've tasted success too often. And, you know, that was one thing we were able to build on. Ricky, I coached with him, and he brought it right in. I will say this about Ricky. He has done more for promoting our kids in this city than I thought ever possible. You know, because here I am with the younger old man, and then I'm with the young man. And, you know, working with both of them, you know, we didn't miss much of a beat. We didn't miss a beat, but we did create a new image. And I guess the only other thing that I would want to pass on as I leave, you know, turn the mic over is, yes, we had 4 sons. Now we have 4 coaches. That young lady back there did a lot for them. There you go, Rick.
Well, this is truly a special day for me. I'm very humbled, and you know, just to be up here is truly a blessing. You know, I've pretty much spent my whole life in Hopewell, and you know, like Coach Henderson said, you know, winning breeds winning, and losing breeds losing also. And one of the things we always try to talk to our kids about is having leaders leading leaders on our football team and within our program, so that when one group moves on, you know, the next group's ready to step up and lead. And, you know, I learned so much from these 2 gentlemen to my right. I can't even describe it. I can't even put it into words, how much of an impact that they've had on me and my life. And, you know, everything I do is directly reflected onto what I learned from these guys beside me, from how to organize a practice, to how to build relationships, to, you know, everything about football. These guys beside me taught me. And I never would have guessed in my wildest dreams I would grow up to be a head football coach. It's just amazing that how that turn has been taken. I was a baseball guy, loved baseball, and, you know, played football and basketball growing up a little bit too. But once I hit 9th grade, I kind of just focused on baseball. And, you know, I wish I hadn't, but I did. And when I started coaching, I loved it. Coach Parker would take us to coaching clinics every year, and I would go to all these different meetings, not even from the position that I coached, just because I wanted to learn so much. And I wanted to, you know, try to understand more and more about the game. And I appreciate him for that, because I would not be sitting right here if it wasn't for these 2 men beside me. I just want to make sure that, you know, they get the recognition that they deserve. And, you know, we've been able to win 2 state championships, and they're a direct reflection of these 2 men beside me. You know, I won't talk too long, because I know we're running short on time. But, you know, my thing about winning a state championship, what I remember the most is the process, and I talk about that a lot. You know, the process of becoming a champion is something that I really want our kids to understand and appreciate. And Coach Parker beside me, you know, this guy beside me here, he's been with me since the first year. And from 2015 to 2019, every year we set a record for the amount of points scored in a season with him as the offensive coordinator. So, you know, he's not only a great coach, but he shares the same vision about trying to build our kids to grow up to be better fathers, better husbands, better employers, better citizens. And we truly feel like with that philosophy, we're going to win games along the way. And our kids will tell you, like, our motto that we talk about a lot is called the CLAW. And that stands for character, leadership, accountability, and work ethic. And those 4 pillars, those 4 things, if we're focusing on those things, we're going to win football games, because we're blessed to have great players. And I'm truly blessed to have the best coaching staff around. The guys that I have, sometimes I get too much credit. But those guys behind the scenes and that are coaching them do a tremendous job. And so, you know, a couple quick stories and then I'll turn it over. But That 03 team, I was lucky enough to be the offensive line coach on that. And what Coach was talking about with Bobby playing center at Meadowbrook, our starting center had gotten hurt, and Bobby was a sophomore. I was the offensive line coach at that time. And so we put Bobby I think we moved him from guard to center. And that's a true story. Meadowbrook had a nose guard that was about 160 pounds, and he was a state champion wrestler, and he was quick as a cat. And so Bobby was trying to snap and block, and Lee did. Lee went up to him and said, "Bobby, you need to give me the ball." And Bobby did say, he said, "Lee, I can do one or the other. I can either get you the ball or I can block." He said, "Now next week I might be able to do both." He said, "But right now I can't." So I'll never forget. Lee said, "Just give me the ball." And the true leader that Lee was, he said, "Just give me the ball. We'll make something happen with it." And when you had Jared Brown and David Harrington, Warren Hedgepath, guys like that on that football team that were just phenomenal players. Lee was such a great leader. Lee and Joe had so many of the same attributes. That leadership. Joe Elias down there, I'll get teared up talking about Joe, because here's a young man that was a true leader, one of the best leaders I've ever been around, and the way his team would rally around him, and it was just amazing. He had his toughness, just the leadership skills that he possessed, the intangibles that you want as a quarterback. I'm not sure I've ever been around a kid that had it, other than maybe Lee Bujakowski, but they're definitely two in the same boat right there. Jared Brown, I'm going to talk about him for a second. I remember my biggest memory of Jared is, I think we're playing Matulka in the first round of the playoffs, and I think Jared scored all 38 points. I think he had 4 touchdown rushes, touchdown catch, 5 extra points, and a field goal. And I'm thinking, this guy scored every point we have in a playoff game. It's amazing. But just to watch him grow too. I was a young coach then, not much older than those guys, and still learning the game, and to be able to watch those guys play and to learn from that 03 team was amazing. Then the guy down there on the end is a guy that played for us as well, Khalil Murdoch. We call him Red. Now, Red's junior year was 2019, and Red had a torn labrum in his hip, so he missed the first 8 or 9 games for us, and finally got to where he could do some rehab and play a little bit, but was the defensive MVP in the state championship game. He came back for the playoffs and was able to play, and unfortunately his senior year COVID hit, and our season got canceled and moved to the spring. By that time, all the colleges were filled up, and so he had a great spring season. Ended up going to Fork Union Military Academy, and then accepted a full scholarship to University of Buffalo, where he's at now playing football. And another great leader. Yeah, good round of applause. But Khalil was a defensive player for us, and just another young man that everybody looked up to. That was a great leader and a great football player, and he would hit you. He would hit you, and so he's still carrying that trait on to Buffalo. So, the next guy beside me, I'm gonna talk just for a second about him. I definitely wouldn't be up here with 2 state championships without Brock Parker. His innovative mind, his ability to call an offense is just unbelievable. Whenever I talk to college coaches that come by or that come see us, I said, look, I don't mess with the offense. One of the things I learned from Marshall Parker is you hire good people and you let them do their job. And so I've been a part of several coaches where that necessarily wasn't the case. And, I always believed in that. And I think that's probably part of the reason we've had our staff together for a while is, I hire good people and I let them do their job. And so Brock does an awesome job calling the offense, and I coach the defense, and we go from there. But this has just been a tremendous journey for me. God has blessed me tremendously. My family really supports. I see my daughter and my mother-in-law back there and my nephew, and they support us tremendously. I've invested my whole life in this town, and there's nothing more than wanting to see success come out of Hopewell. And if we can be a small glimmer of hope or a bright shining star on a Friday night for our city, then that means more to me than anything.
I first want to thank Susan for asking me to be up here with these wonderful panelists. I guess I can go back to the day I can remember, because I remember when I was a little kid, probably selling Pampers, going to football practice with my dad for 6 o'clock in the morning, which they ended soon because a lot of kids couldn't make it there that early. But that was probably the one thing I enjoyed the most, was going to practice with my dad and Coach Henderson as well. And I think that's ever since I was a little kid, the only thing I wanted to do was call football plays at Hopewell High School. So follow my dad's footsteps. And thank you, Ricky, for allowing me to do that. I could sit here and say a lot of things about my dad, but I'll probably get choked up. So, but he definitely is the reason why I'm doing what I do today. Seeing him, what he did with young student athletes at the high school, and I just wanted to do the same thing. And then to see him pass the baton to Ricky, and Ricky do the same thing with these young men as well. Definitely is the reason why I'm still coaching today, because Ricky definitely leaves me alone, lets me call the offense, and does so much for the student athletes at the high school, especially the football players. I guess Ricky, I know you talked a little while. I'm not going to talk that long, but just a few things about the 2 state championship teams that I can remember. In 17, we weren't doing so well. Lost our last 3 games of the season. And all of a sudden, things just clicked. I don't know if our quarterback, Greg Huffey, and I just got on the same page or what it was, but things started going very well for us in the playoffs, and I just felt like every play I called, it just worked. And in the 2019 season, the 2 guys on the end right here, I know Coach Urberry talked about Joe's leadership. That was going to be about 15 minutes of my speech. But I've never coached a quarterback that could handle the offense like Joe did. He was the extension of me, calling plays. And he was so coachable. All he wanted to do was learn. And that was just, for me, just great. I could sit there and talk football all day with him, and he just soaked it all in. And I remember going into the first playoff game that year, and I'm like, look, we got All-American running back on the team, and we've got to, loosen the offense up a little bit. We got to have a couple good throws a game. And he, that first game, I think he threw 2 touchdown passes in the first playoff game. And I remember telling Ricky, I was like, we just won a state championship. And so since then, he came up big against Phoebus in a game we needed him the most. I think he threw for 130 that game, and had a couple huge third down passes. But I know a lot of us look at Trey, and he had a great season and was he had a lot to do with us winning. But Joe's leadership, sometimes as fans, you don't really see that when he changes plays at the line of scrimmage or things that young quarterbacks might do. And I know Lee, we used to talk about that sometimes too, when he was in high school, about some of the things that quarterbacks have to do that people just don't know, right? There's armchair quarterbacks that think they know everything. Joe was a big reason why we won 2019, and also Khalil at the end. The next year, even that year, just a huge leader as well. He played very well in the playoffs on defense, and everything that he's gonna do in the future, he deserves, because he worked so hard at that. And if it wasn't for the players, all the coaches as well, a lot of us probably wouldn't be up here sitting here. And I just got to thank Ricky as well for letting me do what I love, and worrying about all the other headaches that offensive coordinators and assistant coaches don't have to worry about. So, and Dad and Herman, y'all have been a huge influence on me in my life. Like I said, I don't get too emotional, but they definitely have made me to the man I am today. So thank you guys.
Thanks, Brock. And I want to also start by thanking the American Legion for having us here today, and Mrs. Eliades for inviting me. It's quite the honor to be up here talking to you guys, and it's actually really cool to see I was not expecting this many people, honestly. So it's cool that there's this many people in the community that want to come hear us talk about the glory days. So, which is something I enjoy doing. So, but it really, it strikes me that there's many people in the community, and that's what strikes me about the 2003 team is it really was a community effort and a culmination for the entire community, kind of bringing that state championship home because it had been a bit of a drought for us until then. So, Joe can speak to this, Brock, Coach Parker as well, all quarterbacks. When you're the quarterback, you get far too much credit when your team wins, and oftentimes too much blame when your team loses. And I was very, very lucky because my teams didn't lose much. So I tended to get way, way, way too much credit and still do for the 2003 state championship team because the truth is, it was a great team. It started with a great coaching staff that all four of these gentlemen to my right were on. And we had excellent players as well around me, one of which I'm getting ready to hand the microphone over to, and I'll tell a story about him before I do. But starting with Coach Parker, some people know this, some people don't, but Coach Parker came up with, at the time, an offensive scheme that was groundbreaking. Just pretty much nobody else in the area was running the type of offense that we ran, that he basically schemed around all of my strengths and none of my weaknesses, which made me look really, really good. So I appreciate that, Coach Parker. But it was kind of a no huddle, semi hurry up offense that, like I said, was really a trailblazing thing for the area. A lot more teams do it now, but 20 years ago or whatever, no one was doing it. So that was the first step, to me, that really sort of turned the tides. But even before that, guys like Brock mentored me, Brock in particular, because he was the quarterback before me. He had great teams. There were great teams that played up until 2003 that really knocked on the door to bring the state championship home. So by the time we were a senior, we really had a great foundation and a building block from guys like Brock and Trey, Jim, Michael, Bobby Henderson played with me, but the Henderson boys, Brock Parker, Adam Tiller, guys like Kareem Taylor, all those guys that played before me that aren't state champions, really in my mind are, because like I said, it was really a culmination for us, for obviously the football program and for the city. So, I will tell a quick story though about my teammate here, Jay Brown, who was by far the best player on our team. I spoke to maybe I was the face of the team, being the quarterback, and again getting too much credit. But this guy beside me was the heartbeat. He was the man, did it all. And one of my stories was actually going to be about that playoff game that Coach Irby mentioned. Scored every point that we had. He did it all for us. Played middle linebacker, running back, caught a ton of passes out the backfield, kicked, punted, kicked off, return kicks. So pretty much anything you can do other than throw it, which was my job, he did for us. So Coach Parker had mentioned one of my probably my favorite game, one of my favorite games anyway of my career was the semifinal that was bitterly cold at I guess it was Oscar Smith High School, and where the team we were playing was really, really good. We were on there, in their home area, freezing cold, the coldest game I've ever played. And we, of course, me being the quarterback, I've got like 3 layers of sleeves on, hand warmer, got the stuff in my cleats that make my feet warm, everything, turtleneck, everything going on there. And everybody else had sleeves on too. It was really cold. We go out to 50-yard line for the coin toss. It's me, Jay, and Dave Harrington, who also didn't play defense and was a receiver, so he's got all the same stuff I've got on. We're freezing cold. Jay's got on just one pair of sleeves, so we come out there, and these 3 captains for the opposing team are out there, and they have no sleeves on. They're bare sleeved, and I'm literally like, teeth chattering. And these guys are like, jeering us a little bit, saying, "Oh, look at these guys, man, they're cold. Ooh, look how cold they are. These boys aren't ready, they're cold." And Jay Brown, without never saying one word, he just very calmly, we were in full pads, he takes undoes his helmet, takes his helmet off, drops it on the ground right at the 50-yard line, pulls his jersey up, undoes his shoulder pads, takes his shoulder pads off at the 50-yard line, and then takes his sleeves off at the 50-yard line and throws that toward them as well. So I'm standing there in full uniform, and Jay Brown is bare-chested next to me, putting his jersey back on just to let them know that he was going to play without sleeves that day too. And play he did, because he took over the game from day one. It was very windy. We could not throw the ball much. We ran it a ton, and he made about 400 tackles, it seemed like, on defense, and won us that game, which then obviously got us to the state championship game, which we were able to win. So that's one of my favorite memories of Jay. It really speaks to sort of the tone he set for us. He was quite the tough guy. So I don't know how many words he's going to have for us. I'm a little afraid of him still to this day. So anyway, no, it's really a blessing to be here. I really appreciate it. Thank you all for coming. I'm going to pass it off to Jay Brown.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I knew I probably wouldn't have to say much after Lee and after some of these guys, but I think like Brock, I probably wanted to thank people, but without choking up. Speaking of like Hopewell and the community, a lot of people know that, you know, we, especially us, like we grew up together in these things, but I think they don't realize that we really got handed off by some great guys. That it started, Coach Henderson, when we were little kids. I mean, I'm coaching my children now at the age that he was coaching us, and it's just great. It's the best experience of my life. I think about him every time I'm out there. And then, of course, we got Coach Parker as soon as we were old enough to. Well, actually, before that, by the time we were hitting about travel ball, we got handed to Coach Irby. Of course, we were under his watchful eye all through baseball. We got 4 years of varsity baseball with him and traveled with him. So that was a half decade that we spent under his watch. Shoot, and that was added on to Coach Henderson's, 15 years that whether we were playing Little League baseball, whether we were wrestling, didn't matter, he was there. I mean, it's everything you could ask out of a dad without having one. That's the guy right there that did it. And then, of course, we sort of got to finish up with Coach Parker, and just by that point, Coach, if you don't know, part of the reason we probably weren't clicking a lot during the regular season is because we had a lot of fun. We really did. A lot of the players on the team grew up together, and we were going to be somewhere, getting into something. And I think the coach's discretion, I think, probably allowed it. I think they knew some of the trouble we were getting into, and allowed us to do it. And then what happened was, come playoffs, they started grounding us. So on the night before the games, we were under their control. We would come to the high school, we'd watch a movie or do something where they knew exactly what we were doing. And by that point, we were like, okay, guys, we can go ahead and turn it on for them. And I think we did. But more than anything, I mean, we just had a lot of fun. For as hard as it seems sometimes, you know, when you're with people that you care about, and no matter what, we were laughing. It never really seemed like work. It takes a lot of hard work. I think we all know that to win the state championship. I don't think there's a lot of teams that would get, basically when you come to school on Monday morning, before you started school, we would get a play sheet. And we would often almost get told we had to put those away in class because we were more worried about studying those than we were our actual work. But it really was. It was a positive, great experience. It's something I don't look back on and have a single, regret about. Or I really wished I would have held onto that ball the year before on the goal line that I did fumble. I do think about that. I think that's part of what I felt like I owed back the next season. I'm a little story of mine. It's just one of my random little favorite memories. I've shared this with Lee, but not many other people, because it's not one of the big plays that I think a lot of people think about. But the game where we beat Verona on the Hail Mary, and Bobby's ears are going to be burning somewhere because this one has to do with him too. But we were having a little issue. So the other game, Bobby had a small little quick guy that he couldn't block. This game, I think they had about 900 pounds of defensive linemen lined up in front of him and just said, we're going to run straight over top of this guy. And we were doing everything. I was trying to block. I was trying to chop legs, everything. And we just could not stop. They were bringing everybody. At
as they understood their whole game plan was to put pressure on Lee at that point. And I think me and Lee looked at each other in the huddle at one point and just said, we're not going to get anything down the field right now. And I said, and I can't block two people. I said, so I'm just going to leak out. And he looked at me and he said, all right. And it was something we've probably done 50 times playing in the backyard somewhere. And sure enough, I don't even know if Lee fully trusted that I was going to do it, but he kind of pump faked me a little bit. But he dished it off about 3 yards. I ended up running down the sideline and scoring, and that put us in position to end up getting that Hail Mary. And that was, again, that's just one of my favorite little memories that I probably wouldn't have happened if it wasn't with somebody that I'd grown up around and done it a ton of times when it didn't matter. And then one time it did. And that was a good one because it was Verona. I was so excited for that Verona game. We almost had Coach, but it didn't come through. But again, thank you all, everybody up here, Coach Parker, Coach Henderson, Coach Irby, Brock. I mean, y'all, we looked up to you guys, Brock. Y'all stood on mountains as far as we were concerned when we were kids, and we just wanted to be like y'all. And then the guys on the other side of you are the ones that really helped us become that. So thank you more than anything.
First off, I'd like to thank Coach Irby and Coach Parker for allowing me to fulfill a childhood dream of playing for Hopewell football. Like, you may have looked up to these guys, I looked up to you guys. I remember my father took my brothers and I to every home game there was, and I would just imagine myself out on the field. And then fast forward 18 years, I was actually out there on that field. Half the time, very, very nervous, but it made it really easy having the #1 running back in the country standing right beside me. I'll share one really funny story that I love, and we're playing Prince George at Prince George, and I think we might be 7-0. And throughout the week, they've talked to some of us, and they're having their first half decent year in a decade, and they think they're gonna beat us. And it's their homecoming, so they scheduled us for their homecoming, which is usually scheduled Colonial Heights, someone that you know you'll beat. And so they decided this year that they feel comfortable and they want to schedule us. So we get there and we're going through our usual warm-ups about 30 minutes before the game, and out of nowhere their band just walks right through our warm-ups, which is really disrespectful again. And I think it was Coach Parker was like, all right, we'll be fine. Just go in the locker room. We don't even need to warm up. And Coach Irby gave a speech that Coach Irby never gets really crazy with us, never says anything too wild. But his speech, I won't repeat it, but it was a speech that I don't think we knew we won that game before we even came out of that locker room. And that's my favorite story. I have many, many stories that I love to recollect with my friends about, but that's my single favorite memory about Hopewell football.
So yeah, I didn't really come from, I came from Petersburg, so it's a little different than growing up and looking up at everybody. But when I came down to Hopewell, pretty sure everybody from where I was from, they looked at me like a traitor, but ever since I stepped foot in Hopewell, it was like a family bond. I think my 5th grade class, I came in 5th grade, 6th grade, I think I've been in classes with Joe ever since then. And everybody is the whole football aspect, everything about it was just such a family thing. I think the whole thing about when we won that state championship, it was everybody literally playing for each other, even though it was a family, so we had our little fights and everything. And even I think the day before, we had one of our worst practices of the season. But it was a family for sure, and we had people knew it was gonna be their last football game ever playing. I think Coach B Moore had this little speech before the game. I haven't cried in years, and he almost brought a tear out of me. Man, it's guys that you don't want to ever lose for, and yeah, we played like it for sure. And Hopewell, even looking back now, I know this is what home is. Once I come, I'm trying to put on for them and be making a name for it up in Buffalo. But yeah, I'm just thankful for everybody and all the love that's been put out.
I do want to say one thing about Lee talking about the best football. I think the best football game we broke the state record in passing was the year before when we lost the game JB was talking about when he fumbled the ball toward the end of the game. But it was close, wasn't it, JB? We thought it was a touchdown. We really did, but we ended up losing. But before that season started, I'd gone to Delaware with our staff. Only place I could find to take our staff. And they didn't run anything at that time but the wing tee. And Lee found out I was going there. He said, we're going to run the wing tee. That means we don't throw the ball. We're going to run every time. I said, yeah, Lee, we're going to let Jared do his thing. And we're going to get the ball here. He was so upset. You remember that, Lee? We came back and I finally told him we're going to do a no huddle. And I remember the first game we played, Verano, and they were always a state contender. And we're going over they're coming to us to play. And we had gone to 2 scrimmages where we got in the huddle all the time, but we practiced all the time with no huddle. So we go to that game, and the score was 41-38. We lost, but Verona was worn out. They were worn out. And their coach said, you'll never sneak up on me again with that offense again. And I think it was 1,000 yards of offense that football game. And I think that was a start of how things changed for us that year. And Lee and Jared had a big part of that right there. And I appreciate that, you guys, what y'all did for us.
And Marshall, I'm glad you didn't go to the wing tee, because if you look up the Central Region passing records, you'll see a guy named Russell Wilson in there who played for Collegiate and then played for the Seattle Seahawks and went to 2 Super Bowls and won one and is playing for the Denver Broncos. And he looks up to Lee and all the passing stats in the Central Region. So if you're wondering how good these guys are, that's one example. If you're wondering how good Jared Brown was, he was Times Dispatch Metro Player of the Year in 2013. He wasn't named All-Region. I'll never forget how mad Marshall Parker was because they couldn't put him in a position because he did everything. That's how you score every point in a game. You do everything except pass. So he was Metro Player of the Year. Greg Cuffey was Times Dispatch Metro Player of the Year. Travion Henderson was Times Dispatch Metro Player of the Year and Gatorade Player of the Year for the entire state of Virginia. I predict he's going to win a Heisman Trophy. He's going to come back to Hopewell, and he's going to stand under that great big H that's going to stand for Hopewell, Henderson, and Heisman. And so all of that stuff happened because of Mr. Hips and Coach Tiller and Charlie Cormany through Marshall and Herman and Ricky and Brock and Lee and Jarrett and Joseph and Red. And I tell you what, it's been a real honor to be up here. And we didn't rehearse this thing, but listening to these guys, I'm telling you, you couldn't hire and add a PR company and prep for 3 years to come up with better words. And you know why those words were good? Because they're real and they're from the heart. And if you can't tell it, you're not paying attention. But it's really an honor to be up here. I'm sorry Jeff had to go. He's very mindful of his other obligations. We all have day jobs, and he had to go to his other. Last time he had to leave a game once, and I'm the color guy. I just stand up and tell jokes. But he said, I got to go. I've got another commitment. And it's like halfway through the fourth quarter, he said, you need to do play-by-play. And I was like, well, I actually did it. It was fun. But the thing I had a problem with was I didn't know how to turn off the radio station at the end of the game. So I just unplugged the radio station. So I don't know how to turn this off either, so I'm going to hand it over to Susan. Thank you all. And thank you, Elliot.
Someone asked me to ask you to recognize the cheerleaders in the room.
And that was my mother who asked you, and I wrote it down. Let me get my big ring. They gave me a ring. It weighs, I can't even bench press it. So if the cheerleaders who are here, and I apologize, I actually circled it. I've been busy. If the cheerleaders who are here could stand up and actually do one of those split things, that would be great. Cheerleaders?
Come on.
Yeah. Looking good. Lots to cheer for. Thank you all.
Wait just a minute.
Okay.
You called on me first, and I couldn't say a word. Now I got something to say. They told me to be brief and tell a joke. But a memory I had and I wanted to share with you. Most of you people were there. I happened to be involved with the Moose fraternity, and in 2003 I went before the Board of Officers and I asked them, I said, look, these boys won the state championship. When we won it, Kiwanis Club put on a banquet for us. Why can't we have a banquet for these boys? Good idea. You're in charge. So it doesn't pay to open your mouth sometimes. I'm going to do it right now. But Lee was the quarterback that year, and we had a little short governor of the Moose. And at the time, I didn't know what to do. When we won, they gave us a little football we hung on our chain that all the boys had. But it was long about Olympics time, so I got what I thought was a medallion. And this little short governor was trying to put it over Lee's neck, and he couldn't get up that high. Lee had to bend over. I'm sure Jane was there. And a lot of you people were there, I'm sure, because it's been the fans of Hopewell that have really made it. If you look at some of these pictures I brought, the stands are packed with people. All the fans in Hopewell that really made us what we were, I thought. Travel anywhere in the state we played, they were there. Even in the Carolina we played, they were there. I don't know, we went to Kingston, North Carolina and had a football game, and we come back winners. But I wanted to share that little story with you, but it doesn't pay sometimes to bring up something that you might get hung up with. Now I gotta, before I make a mistake, I better quit.